Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Apprenticeships provide a real opportunity for employers to train and prepare our workers for our workplaces with transferable skills more quickly than other traditional methods. In Switzerland, 70% of all high school students are in dual education pathways of their choosing that pair education and on-the-job training, leading them into careers and higher education while earning an income. This podcast is sponsored by Clear Company. Apprenticeships provide opportunities for all kinds of people to learn skills and trades, including people with disabilities. And this is also an ideal way to fill roles quickly when demand is high for specific skill sets. This podcast is part of the Future of Work series in partnership with PEAT. They are the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, or PEAT. Today I'm joined by Neil Milliken. Neil is the global head of accessibility and inclusion at Atos, where his role is to help make the world a better place by delivering better technology for their customers and staff, embedding inclusive practices into the business as usual processes of the organization with thousands of employees and turnover numbering in the billions. Like many companies, Atos has found that demand for both accessible products is growing, but that it's difficult to find candidates with the skills that they need. In a survey last year by the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, 3 out of 5 companies respondents similarly reported that it was difficult or very difficult for their organization to find job candidates with accessibility skills. For Atos, apprenticeships have proven to be a valuable technique to quickly recruit new and more diverse talent. Neil, welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about your background as the global head of accessibility for Atos. How'd you get there?
It's a bit of a circuitous route. I've been working in assistive technology for around 2 decades now. Before that, I worked in the sort of media and .com business. So I worked for an assistive technology company for about 10 years and then ended up going to work for Siemens to provide assistive tech for BBC. Atos bought Siemens IT, and I've been there for the last 8 years since at Atos, and I've grown the competence within the organization over the years, and we're serving lots of multinational clients and government organizations, etc., to deliver accessibility.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk a little bit about some basic terminology before we kind of dive into more about what you do. Can you talk to us about what an apprenticeship program is, and then maybe the types of apprenticeship programs that you guys offer?
Okay. UK is quite unusual in that there is a very structured government program around apprentices. There is, in fact, a levy or a tax on large organizations that we all have to pay into. So in the UK, we pay into the Apprenticeship Levy. But what that does mean is that apprenticeships are actually subsidized by this levy. So the cost of delivering an apprenticeship to an individual is actually really low. Apprenticeships run across multiple different levels, from sort of very much entry level to postgraduate degree level apprenticeships. So there's various different levels of apprenticeship. So there's a mixture of on-the-job and academic learning, and depending on what level the apprenticeship is, the blend of the academic and on-the-job learning will differ.
Do you feel like the subsidy program that you mentioned in the UK makes apprenticeships more popular and attractive there than maybe in some of the other countries that you guys work in?
It's certainly given our organization much more focus. We're very focused on accessibility not just accessibility apprenticeships, but apprenticeships in general in the UK, because we're paying into the levy, so we want to get out of it too. So in other countries where we might be running graduate programs, we're also putting a big focus on apprenticeships in the UK. We're recruiting a lot through the apprenticeship program.
One thing I have found is that in the US, anyways, apprenticeships are really focused on journeymen or people who are in the trades. How is that different maybe in some of the other countries or areas that you've worked in?
So I think that things do vary from country to country. Certainly in Central Europe, there is a lot more structure to learning about a trade or a profession than there might be in the UK, for example. As a builder in the UK, you don't have to take any qualifications to end up on a building site, whereas in Germany, there are strict rules and you have to learn stuff and get certifications and so on and so forth. I think that also our apprenticeship schemes running as they do across the multiple different levels, from the basic apprenticeships to the degree and postgraduate degree apprenticeships, obviously mean that there is a wider focus. If anything, the levy in the UK has meant that business has had a focus on the more senior level apprenticeships.
Give us an idea of scale here. How many apprenticeships have you had individuals go through, and then maybe the number of countries?
I can only really tell you that we've had many hundreds of apprentices in the UK. I'm not so hot on the numbers in our other parts of our organisation, but and then I've run specific programs within our own area focused on accessibility and employing people with disabilities and providing support for people with disabilities. And I'm actually looking to expand that. And there is a big framework around this in the UK, where there is actually an institute for apprenticeships. So it's there's significant numbers, and there is a focus on technology as well. I mean, it's not the only thing that there's a focus on, but there is a significant focus on technology.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that, because one of the things that you mentioned earlier was accessible technology. Can you walk us through what you mean when you say accessible technology?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, accessibility is the art of making stuff work for everyone, including people with disabilities. And that might be whether people are blind or have cognitive disability like dyslexia, like I have, or have mobility issues. And of course, people acquire disabilities as they're getting older as well. Your eyesight starts to go, your mobility starts to get worse, your working memory isn't as good as it was before. So accessibility is a benefit for everyone, but there are large numbers of people in the workforce and across the customer base and the consumer base that we serve as an organization, and governments serve, and governments are our clients too, and that require this. It's important for us to be able to meet that need, and of course there are also regulations saying that organizations need to meet the needs and not discriminate against people. So what we're trying to do is use technology and our knowledge of technology and apply our knowledge of technology to make sure that people aren't left behind.
What's the average length of your apprenticeship programs that you have there in the UK?
They run between 18 months and 2 years, the ones that we've been doing.
And are you focused just on specific apprenticeship programs that are just for people with disabilities, or is it open to any and all?
No. So, I mean, the overall apprenticeship programs are absolutely open to anyone and everyone. The accessibility ones, again, they're open to everyone, but we would like to encourage people with disabilities to apply, and want to make sure that we're designing stuff and designing our courses and our on-the-job learning to be accessible. So it's not just the technical elements; it's all of the sort of HR and adjustments and accommodations as well.
One of the things that you talked about that I thought was interesting on our prep call is that you referred to disabilities or disability as a mega trend. Can you talk a little bit more about that for us?
Absolutely. So the average person born in 2007 in Japan has a 50% chance of living to the age of 107. So if we extrapolate that across other societies, what you're going to see is a super-aged society. And as I mentioned, age and disability are interrelated. So we've got these huge demographic trends happening where 86% of all people with disabilities weren't born with a disability. They're acquiring them as they get older. And as the population is rapidly aging, like you're seeing in Japan, like you're seeing in places like the UK and Germany, where the populations are significantly older now than they were 15, 20 years ago, then you're seeing an increased proportion of the populace having a disability. We're also seeing reduced numbers of young people who would normally have been supporting those older people with disabilities. So therefore, we're going to have to find ways of enabling people to remain active and economically active and playing their part in society and being self-supporting.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you are listening to the Workology Podcast. Today we are talking with Neil Milliken of Atos about global apprenticeship programs. This podcast is sponsored by Clear Company and is part of our Future of Work podcast series in partnership with the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, or PEAT.
Podcast support provided by Clear Company. Clear Company is a complete talent management platform used by human resources professionals to help them hire, retain, and engage A players with ease. Visit clearcompany.com to sign up for a free personalized demo.
With your apprenticeship programs, what types of skills and training are you providing those who are going through the program? What does it look like?
Okay, well, we have to provide a mixture of technical skills and also soft skills, because actually we need to make sure that people have the right kind of skills to be able to deal with the modern workplace, because we're taking people straight as school leavers, and whilst they may have basic literacy and numeracy and all of this kind of stuff having come out of high school, they're not necessarily going to have report writing skills or be able to present. So we're making sure that by the time that our apprentices have finished, that they're able to be confident enough to be able to hold their own in a meeting, to be able to write a report and deliver a good executive summary, to be able to stand up and deliver a presentation in front of people. And I think that you've got a great example of this. We had my first cohort of apprentices started about 4.5, 5 years ago, and they came straight out of school. And 4 years later, last summer, we had a visit from a delegation from the government of Argentina, and one of the guys that was an apprentice actually gave a presentation on the whole apprentice journey to the Vice President of Argentina. So they'd gone through the program from being a school leaver that didn't have a great deal of confidence and didn't know much about technology or how to address people, to addressing an official delegation. So I think those kind of skills are really important, but we also need to recognize that that's not that common. Not everyone's going to get to present to governments, but they will be dealing with managers and customers and stakeholders and so on. And so the soft skills are really absolutely as important a part of making sure that we're doing the right thing for our customers as teaching the technical aspects of their role.
I think soft skills are often overlooked, and I love that you guys are taking the approach that you're going to arm them with all the resources they need, not just if they're programmers, right, learning how to code, but here's how to talk to a manager, here's how to give a presentation, here's how to ask for a meeting, here's how to deal with these complex situations that aren't normally covered at the university.
No, I think it's really important, because what happens when we get people straight out of school or university, they're not equipped with those skills, and quite often they will come in full of enthusiasm and energy, and they will do things in an experimental way or not do some of the things that are expected, and that results in them getting knocked back, and we don't want to lose the enthusiasm. We're employing people because we believe in them. We're investing in them. So we need to invest in making sure that they are successful, not just technically, but successful in the organization and doing what's needed for our customers.
So when somebody graduates from one of your apprenticeship programs, what happens next with them? Where do they go?
Well, hopefully they stay in the organization. It's our aim that we retain the people that we've trained up for as long as possible. We recognize that they're young and they're not necessarily going to stay forever, but we've got a fairly good retention rate, and they get promoted. So there is a clear career path when you go on an apprenticeship, that you come in at a certain level, and so long as you pass all of the relevant criteria and you complete your apprenticeship, you will get promoted. So you then get to move into more demanding roles.
I like that there's a clear path. They complete the program, they can be promoted, they get some recognition, some additional responsibilities, and have a job within the organization. Yeah,
it's really important that you don't just let people complete a course and then they're left hanging. Otherwise, the first thing you're going to do is lose all of the skills that you've just invested in.
Yeah, and then they'll be disengaged and unhappy and frustrated, and even if they stuck around with you, their performance is probably not going to be as great because they just, I don't know, they're so engaged and excited, and they kind of lost a little bit of that along the way.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we need to keep them engaged. It's really key to making sure that we are successful, because if we don't have engaged employees, they're going to not deliver the kind of customer service and quality that we're expecting.
What advice would you give for somebody who is looking to start an apprenticeship program like yours?
To think about what it is that you need to teach people, and think about that from as holistic a way in as holistic a way as possible. So gather all of the people that your stakeholders and ask them what it is that they need from your employees. Talk to your other employees, your team members, about what are the things that they wish they knew or wish they'd been taught when they started. It's a really important conversation to sort of have with the experienced professionals. What would you tell your younger self? What would be the things that you would want to learn? Because then you can actually start building that into the course materials and into how you're delivering those apprenticeships.
I love that too, because it gets your leaders involved in the process, and they're more engaged because they're able to make suggestions and interact, but also maybe put themselves back in the shoes of those new hires.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to do that because, for example, in the team that I grew, 40% of the team have gone through the apprenticeship program. So there's a big age gap between the team that I built originally and the team that we've grown. So we need them to be bought into the idea and to be supportive of each other.
What about for someone who's scaling their program? I know that you guys are looking to grow the apprenticeship programs that you have there. What advice would you give to someone who's like, I want to do more of this?
Well, so definitely, involve your HR professionals because they're going to help you onboarding. But you also need to find a good education partner. So we work with training partners that help us deliver the apprenticeships and organize and structure the courses and work with us to make sure that the academic portions are all put in place, but also all of the sort of student support and assessment process is done with proper due diligence.
It sounds pretty involved.
But the thing is, you can find a partner to do that. There are professional training providers that can help you run an apprenticeship program. So if you're a small or medium-sized business, you're not going to necessarily have a huge HR team, but you can engage with one of these organizations that can help you. And there are, certainly in the UK, we have apprenticeship standards. So they're actually defined as to what the contents of what the basic contents of an apprenticeship on a particular topic will be. And then you can work with the training providers, and there will be suggested training providers available, so you can go to them and reach out to them.
I like that. I feel like you're paying into the UK program, but it does provide you a nice guide and some suggested best practices and different kind of tools for your roadmap.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a structure to it. I think it's been pretty successful. We're bringing in a lot of people into a form of learning that and on-the-job learning that is, I think, working pretty successfully. It's giving a good return on investment for the money being spent.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, Neil. Where can people go to learn more about you and Atos and your inclusive apprenticeship programs?
So one of the things that I'm really keen to do is take what we've done in the UK and look to scale this, because I think that apprenticeships are a great way of bringing skills into an organization, and it's a great way of people also acquiring skills and getting into jobs that they may not otherwise have got. But I want to do this on a global scale. So if there are people or organizations that are interested, particularly in my case around inclusive design or accessibility, that want to work together to try and take this to other countries, please get in touch. Company's website is www.atos.net, atos.net. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Neil Milliken, NeilMilliken. I'm fairly prolific on there. If you search for me and Atos, you'll find some blogs around the apprenticeship programs. And there's also some stuff about the accessibility apprenticeship on the Institute for Apprentices website.
Awesome. We'll link to all those things that you've mentioned in the transcript of the podcast, so they'll be able to get everything that they need and be able to connect with you and learn more about what you guys are doing, the success that you've had with your internship programs and the accessibility apprenticeship.
Fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.
The Workology Podcast Future of Work series is supported by PEAT, the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology. PEAT's initiative is to foster collaboration and action around accessible technology in the workplace. PEAT is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy, ODEP. Learn more about PEAT at peatworks.org. That's peatworks.org.
Neil and Atos's work on inclusive apprenticeship programs are a great model to follow. I love the way they customize their programs, focus on the technology, and soft skill learning. I think we can all agree that these are things that are often missing from our new hires today. What a great way to provide training and resources for workers and using that opportunity to create a talent pipeline for positions throughout the organization. Neil also points out some facts that I think are important to restate. We are living longer than ever, and a growing number of people are not born with disabilities but develop them over time and as they age. These are things to think about when you're building your accessibility or hiring programs, whether they're accessibility for the workforce or for recruitment and interview and selection. Thank you for joining the Workology Podcast, and thank you to our podcast sponsor, Clear Company.
Production services for the Workology Podcast with Jessica Miller Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.